Welcome to the 1994 podcast. I am Marcus Blake with That Nerd Show.
I'm Alex Moore with That Nerd Show.
And I'm Tristian Evans with Geek Vibes Nation.
All right, episode 3 of the 1994 podcast. And we've got Tristan back with us talking about tonight's movie, a very underrated underdog sports comedy called Little Giants. And we thought it would be appropriate to talk about this like the one football movie the week of the Super Bowl. Also, a little irony for you Dallas Cowboy fans out there. It's a movie where the Giants and the Cowboys face off each other, and the Cowboys, yet again, are not in the Super Bowl. And the Giants have won 2 Super Bowls since the last time the Cowboys were in a Super Bowl. Anyway. Hey, someday it may happen. It may happen. I don't know. But maybe the Cowboys have to change their name to the Little Giants and have a play called the Annexation of Puerto Rico to get there. But we're going to talk about that. I had honestly forgotten about this movie. And in doing our research for the 1994 podcast, Alex and I have found a lot of free movies on YouTube. And this was one of those that popped up. And I looked and I saw the day, it's like, that's a 94 movie. Like, I barely remember it. I know I've seen it. I saw it with like cousins. And I'm glad I went back and watched this movie because 30 years later, I think it's still a fun little movie. It's not great, didn't deserve an award or anything like that. But also, since we're recording this podcast, there's another movie that had come out about football called The Underdogs with Snoop Dogg. And this is kind of one of those underdog, football movies with a bunch of kids and everything. And we're going to jump right in and talk about this movie starring Ed O'Neill and Rick Moranis. This is also one of those kind of one of the last films Rick Moranis did before he kind of took a break from acting to raise his kids after his wife died. So, all right. We're going to jump in. So I'm going to start with Tristan. Had you ever seen this movie before?
I had. And I remember when I was watching this as a kid, because I knew Rick Moranis. When did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids come out? Did that come out before this film?
89.
Yeah. Is it 89? I thought it was 1990.
Okay. Because I remember thinking, I was like, because I guess, again, I would have been like 5 when this movie came out. I guess I hadn't quite grasped the concept that actors could be in multiple movies. Because I was like, what is the dad from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids doing here? What is that? What is the dad from, Ed O'Neill? What is the dad from Married with Children doing here? And I was like, oh crap, they're in other places. So yes, I love this movie as a kid. Like you, Marcus, I watched it with my older cousins. And it's funny, as a kid, it's funny, I didn't understand that actors could be in multiple things, but I was able to understand that I would totally be one of those underdog kids. I knew that about myself, even at 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up loving this movie. So yeah.
Yeah, Ed O'Neill wasn't really widely known in movies. I mean, he was known for Married with Children, still very iconic TV show. Still love my favorite little thing about that show is every time you get the misogynist assholes that are always going off about there's too much better. I always see the little memes or whatever, the no ma'am stuff from that show, and I'm like, you do know that was a satire, right? You're not meant to take that seriously. But anyway, yeah, Ed O'Neill wasn't really widely known. Before he did the movie. My favorite little fact about Ed O'Neill when it came to this movie is he was drafted the same year as Terry Bradshaw with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was cut during training camp. He became an award-winning actor. Terry Bradshaw won 4 Super Bowls. But the irony is he could have been on the Pittsburgh Pirates that had beat the Cowboys twice in the Super Bowl, and he is the coach of the Cowboys in this movie. So, anyway, you have a lot of child actors that kind of became familiar. Devon Sawa from the
Oh,
Final.
listening.
Yeah, he's he was this was like his first movie, I think. And he was a teenager at the time. He was actually a lot taller than kids, according to some interesting facts about this movie. So he had to take his shoes off to film a lot of these scenes. But anyway, kind of an interesting fact too, since the antagonist football team in the movie are the Cowboys. You can take that for however you want it. But the uniforms with the youth football team in that movie are the exact same uniforms that the Dallas Cowboys wore during the 1994 season.
Right.
So,
75th anniversary NFL uniforms.
yeah. So, anyway, Tristan, what do you love about this movie?
So just like with the what I was saying about Forrest Gump, underdogs. I'm a fan of underdog films. Like the kids who are yeah, it was just like again, even as a kid, like I don't know if this is depressing or not. Like at 6 or 7, I was like, yeah, I would totally be one of these kids who like wasn't picked and it was like on the reject team. Um, but like yeah, any kind of underdog story where they kind of come back and prove themselves to be worthy, just like everybody else that always connected with that. So yeah, that's really what I love about it, that these underdogs going to start their own team and prove that they're just as good, if not better.
Right. Um, I think, yeah, because the whole purpose of this movie is they can only have one Pee Wee football team to compete with other towns. So all these kids get cut, and they're like, well, we're going to start our own football team. And of course, you have to play a football game to decide, who's going to be the Pee Wee football team. And it's two brothers who are coaches. The one brother who is a former Heisman Trophy winner, has won championships in college and high school, comes back to his town, and then the brother who was never picked and, somehow puts together a ragtag group of kids to be in a football team that can compete. Um, Now, Alex, here's a question for you. You are, well, we both are huge fans of the Mighty Duck movies. Do you feel like this movie is the Mighty Ducks of Pee Wee football?
Um, I've never really thought about it that way. I don't know, because the mighty well, maybe the original Mighty Ducks, you could say that. I know, the sequel to Mighty Ducks actually came out the same year as this did, and by them they're an actual Olympic team, so they're underdogs compared to one other team, but not really a bad team per se. So I think there are certainly some similarities with the characters, how they all kind of have their little quirks that make them funny and humorous. And something I didn't think about until recently when I rewatched The Little Giants myself is that if you look at these characters, you can almost kind of compare them to like the Peanuts characters. Each character sort of emulates one of the Peanuts. If you go kind of down the line, you can kind of line them up. I don't know if that's intentional, but that's kind of how I look at it in
I don't.
retrospect.
I didn't take the peanuts, and my mother would be very upset with me for not recognizing that metaphor because she's like a huge peanuts fanatic. I thought the Little Rascals more than anything else. So, but here's an interesting question: are the peanuts just, you know, I don't want to say rip off, but kind of an homage to the Little Rascals because the Little Rascals came out in the 30s, and Peanuts and Charles Schultz didn't start writing the Peanuts until the 50s.
It's
Mm,
possible.
yeah, but yeah, I looked at it as the Little Rascals more than the Peanuts. Tristan, you're the third person. You got to settle this debate. Are they more like the Peanuts or the Little Rascals?
Oh, I feel like they're more like the Little Rascals. I do, and I think there's something to be said about like when it comes to like things for kids, I mean, there are kind of certain archetypes that if you look at all kids movies, like pretty much across the board from the 30s to now, they kind of use the same archetypes. I mean, they probably have
Yeah,
evolved a little bit now, but I think there's also something about that. Like, there's just certain archetypes that are easy, especially the audience or the kids. So it's easy for
yeah.
us to go in and say, okay, that's this kid. Yeah, I know this kid. I know this kid. But I do think they're more like Little Rascals.
Well, I mean, you put a group of kids together and ragtag sports team or whatever. I mean, or they do anything. Um, it's I think you're always going to go to like the Little Rascals or the Peanuts gang. Um, in fact, you want to really take a step forward. Animal House are just the college version of the Little Rascals. I know that might be a stretch. I'm just throwing it out there. This is what they become in college. Um, but yeah. So, Alex, what's your favorite thing about this movie?
For me at this point, it's purely just out of nostalgia. I remember when it came out, and I didn't see it when it first came out, but a lot of my classmates were talking about it, so eventually I had to go see it. And it's just, from a kid's perspective, it's just enjoyable as a kid's movie because it's about kids. But when I look back on it now, that's kind of, it just takes me back to that moment as a kid where I enjoyed it as a kid. As an adult, I don't, or as a critic even, I don't, you know, think there's much to really say about it as far as what I like. I guess I got to go back to just all the interesting characters and all their little quirks. It's very challenging to make a movie where the bulk of the cast is kids, of course, and there were several of those in 1994, including a remake. Well, not a remake, but a movie version of The Little Rascals, by the way. So,
Yeah.
uh, and I think this is actually a little bit better than that movie. I think this was made a little bit better than that movie overall. So, if I were ranking them, I'd probably rate it a little bit ahead of The Little Rascals. But to me, it's just the nostalgia. That's what I really enjoy most about it.
So, if you want to look for comparisons between the Mighty Ducks, which had come out a couple years before the original one, I love the fact that kind of your star player, um, well, besides the quarterback or one of your star players is female, the coach's daughter. And Mighty Ducks had the same thing. Connie on the Mighty Ducks, who was played by Margarita Moreau. You know, she was kind of tall for her age, kind of big for her age as a girl, um, and was great. She is just as good, if not better, than some of the guys. So you kind of have those comparisons, and that's another reason I kind of like this is the Mighty Ducks version of for football because they are the team that they're the laughing stock. No one's gonna take them seriously, and even though it's not a league and it's just one football game, um, they're the ones who kind of become victorious. The other thing, what is it about every like 90s or like even 80s or 90s movies? You always have to have the computer kid
Mm-hmm.
figure everything
Yes.
out.
Yeah.
Like a great homage to Revenge of the Nerds. I'm still trying to figure out how did you get the computer on the sideline, trying to figure out all the plays. I'm just like, what is that? Was there just a long extension cord?
Marcus, you know what? You can't think too much about it because how was that one kid? You remember he tells the one kid, I'm gonna knock your head into your butt" or something like that. And
Yeah, I
then he
know.
actually talks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you just gotta go with it because how did that
Parting
happen?
out of your mouth, talking out of your butt.
I know. I understand, but I still want to know about the computer because, like, how did you get that out there? Why does this work?
One thing I will say, because I rewatched this yesterday, one thing I really loved about it is that, like, even though it was a kids movie, at its core, it was still like, well, one main part of the movie was like the conflict between the brothers. I
Yeah,
kind of liked that was kind of the overarching plot, and also I love that no one was perfect. And what I mean by that, even Rick Moranis' character, like, he loved his daughter, but he never really gave her that room to like just because she was a tomboy, he forgot that she was a girl too. And so
Yeah.
the one scene that kind of bothered me, but I understood why they put it in there is when Ed O'Neill is talking to his niece, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't think you're pretty. I think you're beautiful." Like her dad, even though he's a good dad, left that opening for his brother to kind of get in her head. So I really
Well,
love that.
Rick Moranis becomes more obsessed
Yeah, that's true.
when
Yeah.
trying to win a football game, and basically it's like they switched the roles more than anything else. Because Rick Moranis is trying to, recruit the Spike kid.
Mhm.
They have the All-American quarterback that should be on the other team, yada yada yada, and he ends up forgetting about his daughter. And the uncle's like you said, it's like don't think that you're not, beautiful or anything like that. To boldly go where printing has never gone before. That's what we do at First Stop Print. From business cards to flyers, to signs and banners, to every kind of marketing material imaginable, we take care of all your printing needs. We have the best prices in the US, and we can beat any competitor, especially with our free shipping on every order. You get the best quality at the cheapest price. So what are you waiting for? Warp speed ahead. Contact First Stop Print today. Engage. Um, Ed O'Neill's kind of my favorite character in this. I mean, does he learn a lesson at the end of the movie? Sure.
Mhm.
He is the prototype. Every coach who is obsessed with winning, who, doesn't give people a chance and cares more about it at Pee Wee football. For God's sake, it's Pee Wee football. Okay. It does not matter. All right. I run a printing business, and one of the things that we do is we print sports banners for like youth leagues and stuff like that. And I love talking with the moms, and there's fun trash and everything. But the most important thing that they have at that age and this level is we want them to have fun. We want them, and I love when they take all these photos where they're showing off their football moves and everything for their banners because parents hang them on. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's winning the league or anything like that. It's going there and do your best. Life is not over. Okay. Winning is not everything. Did you have fun doing this? You know, so Ed O'Neill plays the great antagonist of no, winning is everything. And the only thing I need to put on my resume now is Pee Wee football championship. It's Pee Wee football. Okay. I mean, I say the same thing about high school football. It doesn't really matter. Okay. In the grand scheme of things. But, because, hey, when you're trying to get that really good corporate job or whatever, well, man, I did look at my high school championship ring. It's like, woo, you have to open it up.
One
I think
thing,
I think there's value in both sides of it, but you have to kind of find a happy medium. I think maybe if you're too happy-go-lucky, maybe you're not taking life seriously enough, and you can run into problems there because at some point you got to get serious. But if you're too serious all the time and everything is a competition, then you're not never going to be happy because you can't be perfect and you're not always going to win. So
Yeah.
think that they kind of square that with some of the cutting, some of the editing, where you see their approaches are completely opposite. And I think that's some of the humor, like say, where they're about to go to the field and they're holding the football up, and Ed O'Neill's character says, "This isn't just a football; it's alive." And then Rick Moranis' character says, "It's only a football, just air and pig intestines." And the players are like, to completely like, one's like rah rah, and the other's like ew. So
Um, here's an interesting, if you want an interesting metaphor, Rick Moranis is the Ted Lasso of that movie.
yes.
It's about making them better people and having fun more than it is about winning that game. It's just about we want to be considered. Everybody should have a chance to play, type thing. And sometimes it takes that ragtag group of kids to be able to pull it off. So here's an interesting question. We talk about nostalgia, we talk about feel-good movies or whatever. I mean, we can all admit it's not a great movie, but it's a fun movie, worthy of talking about in 1994. Sorry, losing my train of thought there. Are these kinds of films just as important as the award winners because they entertain us, because they can kind of make us feel good, and there's something that we can learn from us? Do you feel like they're just as important? I do, personally.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to interject again, but it may sound a little counterintuitive, but it's like the reason why we like underdogs. If the favorite team wins all the time, it's not as exciting. So it's one of those things where if every movie we go see is a great film that's about the high art form, it's not as special to us if they're all that way. So we need these movies that are just kind of, just silly and funny, even if it's not a great movie. And even if you're not going to rate it super high, at least say, hey, for this kind of audience, have a good time, but don't expect too much, kind of thing. Just sort of treat it the way it needs to be treated, I guess.
Well, 30 years later, I think it's still a great little family movie that you can watch with your kids. I think, we still see these kinds of people. There's still little young football teams that are not very good. They're going to be the bottom of the league or whatever, but, can they go and have fun, type thing. It shouldn't be all about winning. That doesn't change over 30 years. It's still there. It's still there, especially in Texas. I still think people take it way too seriously. But that's kind of the way it is. Talking about movies that are kind of feel good that you learn to appreciate over the years. Again, I don't really have early memories. I know I had watched this movie, but I can appreciate the underdog spirit. I can appreciate that it's not a great movie, but still a fun one. So I'm going to make this comparison. I went back and watched Adam Sandler's The Longest Yard. And when it first came out, I was still kind of in like, it's not that good. And I love Adam Sandler as an actor beyond his typical early funny roles. I think he's done some really great dramatic roles. Hustle is one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies, the basketball one on Netflix. But The Longest Yard, I have a new appreciation for it now because not only do you have, it's a feel-good story. You love all these characters. You have ex-football players like Michael Irvin in it. The fact that you had Burt Reynolds come back and be in that movie. There's a lot of things that work, even though it may not be as good as the original. And Chris Rock plays a really great caretaker, and we're still sad to when he dies. My point is, it can still be even though it's not great, a good, feel good, just fun movie. And that's all you really need. So I look at it the same way as I do The Little Giants. That is just a fun underdog, great little movie from 1994 that you can watch with the family and get some enjoyment out of it. So, am I wrong in that assessment? Do you guys have a different opinion?
No, I agree. I agree. Like I said, like Alex said, not every film has to be a winner. It's nice to have sort of a balance of the films that are just fun and playful and entertaining. Like I said, just family movies, and maybe they aren't the best, but they give you a good laugh. They take you down memory lane. So no, I agree with everything you said.
So, um, Great little movie, Super Bowl week. I think it still holds up 30 years later. I think you can still introduce a whole nother generation to it. And there's still some really great and funny tropes that are there. Is it the best football movie? I mean, is it necessary roughness? No.
Hey, what is y'all's favorite moment from the movie? I'm just curious.
Me personally, it's at the end of the game. It's time to run the annexation of Puerto Rico play. So, what that is, I'm just like, that's the greatest football play name ever.
It feels like sort of a mishmash of the Holy Roller a little bit.
Yeah. Which also was kind of topical at that time because there was a huge debate in the early 90s about Puerto Rico becoming a state. I took debate in high school and we were talking about it. So, like, that's just my favorite thing. And again, the whole little computer thing is he's figuring it out all this stuff. Of course, in early 90s, it's like the movie Hackers. Hackers makes hacking so colorful and weird, but that's computers, in the 90s. Whatever. So
I think my favorite part, and it's one of those things where I still laugh at it as a grown up. Like when I rewatched it, I'd sort of forgotten about some of the details in the movie, but it goes back to, I kind of referenced it before, when you're cutting back and forth between the drastic differences between these two teams and their approaches, and it goes all the way out on the field. And at this point, the kids playing for the Giants already feel defeated, and you've got the Cowboys having their little huddle and their little chant. They're like, Cowboys, win, win, win. Then it goes to the Giants, and they're like, Giants. And the little kid looks up and goes, help us, God.
Yes, I love it. That was pretty good.
Did in the end, so.
What about you, Tristan? What's your favorite moment of that movie?
You know what? I love how like before, like that one day after practice, things look hopeless and the kid's riding his bike, and then suddenly a the bus stops, and they're like, hey kid, can you help us get here? And, well, like, what team was it? I forgot what team it was, but I'm like, oh wow, like, isn't that a coincidence?
The John Madden cameo.
Yeah.
They're trying to go to the Hall of Fame or something.
Yeah.
So all these future Hall of Famers with them.
Yeah, it just so happened they talked to this kid. Like, out of everybody, you're gonna talk to this random kid on the road. Like, I love it though, even though I'm like, I just roll my eyes, but I'm like, yeah, I like that moment.
Emmitt Smith, that was kind of, it was Emmitt Smith of the Cowboys and Bruce Smith of the Bills, who the Cowboys had defeated
twice at that point.
John Madden, when he's asking, do you have like, it's an inspirational speech? What can I say? Go out and do your best.
Yeah. It's like, bye.
It's like the most underwhelming.
Yes,
there were a lot of Raiders references, because even the little black kid, they call him Hot Hands.
Yeah,
he tries putting the stickum on his hands, and that was something that the Raiders were notorious for in the 80s until they made it illegal. But
it goes so wrong for him though. Like, it did not work out for him the way it should have. Like, that was hilarious.
I do love the nickname Icebox. That's kind of, bigger player that crushes everybody. That was kind of a little inside homage to the refrigerator.
Yeah.
As a Bears fan, I found that kind of enjoyable. But overall, I mean, Little Giants is just one of those fun movies from 1994 that still great to go back and watch today. And I think you should introduce kids. And not taking away from Snoop Dogg's The Underdog, which I didn't really find that funny. I mean, I love Snoop Dogg and anything he does. I just thought, I don't really need an underdog movie where the kids are, cursing all the time and sound like rap stars. And it's just kind of, it just doesn't really feel right when you're dealing with kids. But, it was funny. this is a movie that I feel like is much more of a fun underdog story. You know, anyway. All right, so we're gonna close this out, but we gotta do this. We're gonna grade this movie and how we would grade it today. I'm gonna start with you, Tristan.
Okay, so for what it is, for its genre, not comparing it to Forrest fucking Gump, for its genre, for what it is, I would give it like a 7 out of 10. Like I rate it pretty high for its genre, for its marketing.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna give it a 6.
Okay.
It's adequate. It's an adequate movie that you can still go back and watch. And there's a lot of movies that I give a 6 that I've gone back and watched. The Assassin's Creed movie with Michael Fassbender, which really wasn't that good, but I've gone back to watch it multiple times because I love Assassin's Creed. I give that a 6. So I think you can do that. But anyway, it's a 6. It's an adequate movie. Alex, how about you?
I've been thinking about this the last few minutes, and this is tough because I feel like I don't want to beat up on it too much, but I feel like I need to be a little bit more grounded because I think, I think about all the other family films that came out at that time, and do I think it's as good as Angels in the Outfield? Not quite as good as that.
Oh,
Do I
well,
think?
Angels in the Outfield was 94. I'm sorry, I didn't realize
Yeah,
Angels in the Outfield was 94.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is a good one.
Yes.
Do I
That is-
think it's a little bit better than Little Rascals? I do. Do I think it's? I think it's probably about on the same, maybe about on the same level as Mighty Ducks 2. Like it's got some issues, but there's sort of certain charm to it that I like. But none of those family movies to me are as good as Little Big League. I still think that is the best one out of those movies that I can remember from that year. So taking all that into account, I think I'm going to rate it a 5 out of 10.
Wow, just average. It's just an average movie for you. Just out of curiosity, let's see. We gotta see what Roger and Ebert said about this movie.
Well, I don't know if they reviewed that one or not. Siskel and Ebert, maybe they did.
Or Siskel and Ebert. God, I keep getting that one wrong. Siskel and Ebert. I don't know why I keep going. Well, he did give it a thumbs up.
Well, dang. Siskel probably gave it a thumbs down.
Let's see. Oops. What does he say? Towards the end. Little kids may like this movie if they've never seen one like it before. Slightly older kids with good memories will notice that this is not even the first movie this year where a character passes gas to knock out the other team. Older viewers are likely to bitterly resent the fate that drew them into the theater.
Voltek is the Goldberg character from Mighty Ducks.
Okay. But I mean, he's right. I mean, it's a predictable movie. You kind of know what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter. It's just a fun movie. You can give it like a thumbs up. So that's interesting. All right. I don't know what Siskel actually did that. See, and that's the thing about going back to these movies is we have to talk about Siskel and Ebert, who,
Right.
were at the top of their game at that point. Yeah, there was a really good article not too long ago that 25 years ago, it was the last episode of their show because Siskel, got brain cancer. So, well, anyway, I can't find what Siskel gave it, but Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up or a thumbs up because, it was a fun movie. And I think that's all you can really take away from it. So if you're a family, if you were a teenager, when that movie came out or a kid or whatever, and now you've got kids, yeah, it's a good one to go back and introduce your kids to. Probably not the best sports movie or little kid sports movie of that year. And we're going to talk about some of them later on in the year, but it is a fun one. And you know what? It might be, I'm going to throw this out. for all you people that hate Taylor Swift and think there's too much Taylor Swift surrounding the Super Bowl, you guys need a hug and you need a feel-good movie. Watch Little Giants instead. No Taylor Swift in this movie. Oh, had to throw that out there. All right, we're going to close this out about Little Giants. You've heard us talk about it, how we rate this movie and whether you should watch it. You don't even have to spend money on it to go back and watch it. It's free on YouTube right now. But it's still worth your time and still just a fun family film. Anyway, thanks again for listening to the 1994 podcast. We'll be back with more movies. We got a lot of movies to talk about this year. And we know Tristan's going to be back with us for some other films throughout the year. All right, everybody, say goodbye.
So long.